Ready to rock and roll. Well, it's great to be back here in Croatia with all you wonderful people. And I hope you can bear with me through this lecture. I had planned to go over it during the break, but I didn't have time. So anyway, let's get this show on the road. From 2003 onward, when I first started supplying this medication produced from the cannabis hemp plant, its use has exploded worldwide and continues to be recognized more and more every day by those who are sick and suffering everywhere. But our trusted medical and political systems thus far have refused to react to our needs as they should. One second. Computers don't like me. One of the main excuses we often hear governments use is that the United Nations has regulations in place which keeps this plant's medicinal use prohibited. If there really were a sensible reason as to why the UN put these regulations in place, we would have little to complain about. But judging from the truth of the matter, it seems obvious to me that the regulations which the UN initiated were certainly not put in force to ease human suffering or help us in any way. The UN is controlled by big money concerns, and in reality have done little or nothing to really help the advancement of the human race. As far as I'm concerned, if those who represent us were truly working on our behalf, they would no longer allow organizations such as the United Nations to continue to perpetrate these crimes against humanity. I am a firm believer in law and order. But when the public is subjected to regulations such as this, which are obviously doing so much harm, I think it's just about time the citizens of all countries got together and demanded that governments begin to react to their needs. At present, most who are using the essential oil of this plant to heal themselves are classified as criminals due to the corrupted laws which have been put in place to restrict this plant's medicinal use. Does it seem sensible to you that we have laws in effect which prevents us from having the right to heal ourselves with a natural, harmless, non-addictive oil produced from the hemp plant? I don't know about you, but to me, this all reads much like a script which was written for a bad science fiction movie. And since in reality this has all taken place, it appears that we are living in little more than the Twilight Zone. How could a situation like this have ever occurred? And why are we not doing more to put an end to this travesty? Put simply, our world is being run by overly rich and powerful individuals who wish to dominate our existence while generating huge profits for themselves and their investors. Decades ago, their money and influence corrupted governments almost everywhere into having this wonderful plant outlawed without just cause. They were able to accomplish all this by renaming cannabis hemp marijuana, which is simply one of hundreds of slang terms that I consider to be derogatory, which are used worldwide to describe this plant. For the most part, back when all of this came about, the public had no idea what marijuana even was, and they had no knowledge that what their trusted governments were really outlawing was indeed a plant which had been used in medicine with good effect for thousands of years. This is why I can openly state that there has never been a real law against this plant's growing and use. The restrictions we currently have in place are all based in corruption, which was spawned by the wealthy elite to achieve their aims. There is not now, nor has there ever been, any rational reason as to why this plant's medicinal use was ever restricted. It was greed and the lust for more power by those who are the richest among us that has brought this all about. Mankind has been suffering at the hands of these sick-minded individuals for far too long, and I for one feel it's just about time that we all endeavor to free ourselves from their manipulation. Not only have they been tampering with our health by denying this medicine's use, which has brought about the suffering and death of countless numbers, we also have to look at the damage those with vast amounts of money and resources have done to our earth. Two glaring examples of the horrible consequences these uncaring individuals have caused would be the Gulf oil spill and the Fukushima nuclear disaster, both of which should never have happened, since there are much more sensible and harmless ways to solve our energy requirements. Unfortunately, the list of horrific events which the twisted thinking of the mega-rich have caused is almost endless. Everywhere, it seems, death and destruction is the order of the day, and the inhumanity of those who are causing all this appears to have no bounds. Events like those currently being perpetrated by Israel against the Palestinian people prove what a sick world we currently inhabit. But are we really supposed to allow this to continue? Should we all just stand by and do nothing while innocent people are slaughtered in vast numbers all over the globe and our world is being torn asunder right before our very eyes? If so, then we should all get out our picks and shovels and begin digging our own graves, because in the near future we will likely have a great need for them. When you awaken to the reality of what is truly happening, it seems inconceivable, and it's enough to make any sensible person scream, "Stop the world and let me off." Surely by this time, the human race is coming to realize that something must be done, and the time to do it is now, if we are to indeed provide ourselves and our loved ones with a decent future. To avoid destruction, to avoid the destruction of our earth and the different forms of life it supports, we must all begin to think a bit more rationally. Since the hemp plant can furnish us with just about everything we need to sustain our existence, I see no option other than to grow this plant freely everywhere and use it in every possible way. If we are truly serious about detoxifying this earth and saving ourselves, there is nothing else on this planet which can perform this task other than the cannabis hemp plant. Food, fuel, medicine, and just about everything else we use in our day-to-day lives can be manufactured from hemp. Whatever we are now producing from petroleum can also be manufactured from cannabis hemp in a much more earth-friendly and sustainable manner. So in the future, there should be no reason to continue fighting these senseless wars over petroleum and other resources when there are much more sensible ways to deal with our energy problems. We do not need more oil wells and petroleum or nuclear energy. We need more cannabis hemp and people with the backbone to make it so. Truly, it can only be said that our governments are not representing the best interests of their people by allowing this plant's growing and use to remain restricted. In truth, it has become more than obvious that most governments are behaving in a criminal fashion towards our overall health and well-being. This is not the role our elected officials are supposed to be playing, and if they are unwilling to represent us honestly, then in reality, what right do they have to call themselves our governments? My good friend Max Egan has devised a very simple method in which we should be able to have governments respond to the needs of their citizens. If they refuse to comply with the will of the people, then they are then in breach of trust and have proven themselves to be unworthy of representing us. Max is proposing that we present governments with a people's mandate, and I think what he has in mind could have a very beneficial effect upon our future. I will not try to go any deeper into this subject because Max is here today to explain the concept himself. So when he gives his lecture, please listen carefully, and I think you will agree that what he is saying just makes good sense. Now I will get back to a subject in which I have a bit more expertise. The use of the term drugs is used in the field of medicine, and it is also used on the street to describe dangerous substances that people commonly use to become intoxicated from their effects. The use of most of these substances obviously does present a danger, because many are addictive and deadly, and there is no question that this is so. Since cannabis hemp is neither addictive nor dangerous, why are so many people calling it a drug? To me, cannabis is simply a medicine that can be used with good effect, either recreationally or otherwise. Even the smoking aspect of this plant has medicinal benefits, but the real medical miracles that cannabis can provide will only be found in the proper use of the essential oils produced from the buds of strong medicinal strains. What do we perceive as being medicine? And what do we base our perceptions on? The Hippocratic Oath exposes the way medicine should be practiced. Yet for the most part, doctors do not follow their own oath. The wording of this oath states, "First do no harm." But medical professionals use chemicals, poison, radiation, and such things as CAT scanners, CT scans, which expose their patients to even more radiation on a regular basis. Could what doctors have been doing actually be called the practice of medicine? At the present time, judging by the methods they employ to treat their patients, it certainly does not sound that way to me. In reality, history shows us that this profession has always taken a rather strange approach to the art of healing, which for some reason seems to be largely forgotten today, but I do think it bears reminder. Not so long ago, doctors often employed the use of such things as bloodletting and mercury to treat the sick and suffering, and this type of thing went on for an enormous length of time. Today, we all know the effects of such so-called treatments, and it only makes one wonder why doctors in years gone by would employ their use for such a long period of time. How many deaths would one have to witness before they would finally realize that the treatments themselves, which they had provided, were probably responsible for the patient's demise? With this in mind, it becomes quite clear that even way back then, doctors were very good at rejecting the simple truth, which was staring them in the face every time one of their so-called treatments killed someone. Sadly for us all, doctors of today are little different. If the patient dies, it is never their fault. The medical condition they suffered from caused them to pass on, or God was calling them home. This is the type of nonsense grieving families and friends are told by their trusted physicians and clergymen. Yet sadly, one only has to look at the substances and treatments which the medical system currently employs to learn the truth about such deaths. Chemicals, poison, and radiation do not heal, and are things that should be avoided if we wish to see those who are ill survive. Even most 10-year-old children know this to be true. So why do our trusted doctors seem unable to accept what even a young child can understand? In reality, it's all about the money, folks. And in truth, our governments and medical systems have proven that they have no concern at all for our health and well-being. They are using our healthcare systems to feed the greed of the rich and powerful which they serve. Since this is obviously what has been taking place, one can only surmise that they are all working in league with the devil and they could care less about how many of us are killed needlessly, as long as they themselves are prospering. Why would our trusted political and medical systems want to use natural, harmless, and effective medications produced from the hemp plant to help the sick and suffering, when so much revenue can be generated for their rich masters by continuing to harm the public with chemicals and poisons? There are no big profits to be found in providing natural medications that really do heal, for then there would be little return business to keep the coffers of drug companies overflowing. It's best for the bottom line of these big drug firms if they can continue to have us use their products, which will keep us all sick and suffering while remaining at their mercy. I don't know how any logical person could consider what we are being subjected to by our doctors as being medicine. Often we are told that doctors must follow regulations and only use substances which are allowed. But this is just simply a very lame excuse that has been used far too often for what is currently taking place. A doctor's first concern, A doctor's first concern must be the health and well-being of their patients. If one is truly to call themselves a doctor, they would have to ensure that their patients received the safest and most sensible medications or treatments available. If they were to do so, they would be following their own Hippocratic oath, and they would also have to be using extracts produced from hemp and other harmless medicinal plants to fulfill that oath. Since what I'm describing is obviously true, but still our medical systems refuse to use hemp and other healing medicinal plants properly, could someone please tell me where I can find a real doctor? I think you have to admit that when an ordinary person can take a rice cooker, some solvent, and hemp bud, then produce a medicine themselves that is far superior to anything the medical system offers, then indeed it could only be said that we have little or no medical systems at all. Would what is going on become more apparent to the masses if we simply started calling what they are doing to us by its proper term, which would be the programmed demolition of our bodies and health? I, for one, refuse to allow those in white coats to do such things to me. And every day, more and more individuals are coming to feel the same. Enough with all the false statements and lies. We are now aware of what doctors have been doing to us. And with the use of hemp and other harmless natural healing substances, in a short time, we can provide ourselves with medicines that really do work. As an added bonus, often we will no longer even be compelled to seek the advice of a doctor, for in most cases there will be little need to do so. Now, with the proper use of hemp extracts, most patients can become their own physicians. If any of us were to become afflicted with a serious medical condition, it's far better at present to rely on medications we can produce ourselves. Medications which we are aware have been proven to work, instead of putting our faith in a medical system we know to be badly flawed due to greed and corruption. Our bodies belong to us, and if we choose to treat ourselves with harmless natural medications, who has the right to say it is not allowed? As far as I'm concerned, the show is over for Big Pharma, along with those in control of these companies, and all who have been supporting them. Now we have a sensible answer to most of our health problems, and no power on this earth is going to keep it from us. Why should we obey their corrupted laws, rules, and regulations in regards to the medicinal use of cannabis hemp? If you or someone you care about is in need of treatment, acquire or grow the proper material to produce this medication. It can mean the difference between life and death. then let your trusted governments know that you are no longer willing to abide by their absurd laws regarding this plant's medicinal restrictions. Historically, cannabis hemp produced man's oldest known and safest medications. Also, it was noted that cannabis is non-addictive, and not one death has ever been attributed to its medicinal use. What other medications, which are currently employed by our doctors, can even make such a claim? Practically every so-called medical substance we are provided with is known to do some harm to the body, and often their effects can be very deadly. Even simple off-the-shelf items like aspirin and other seemingly harmless so-called medicinal substances, which are supplied by the big drug firms, are causing tens of thousands of deaths each year worldwide. Thousands of years before the time of Jesus, hemp was being employed for medicinal purposes, and I strongly suspect that Christ himself made good use of its healing virtues. If the greatest healers in history did not hesitate to employ hemp to aid in their patients' recoveries, why do we allow its use to be prohibited today? Oils produced from this plant have already proven themselves to be effective in the treatment or control of practically every human malady. And in all honesty, I cannot name a disease upon which this wonder of nature is not of benefit in treating. Therefore, I cannot help but feel that there is no longer a need for any further controversy over this subject. If this plant and the oil it produces cannot be considered medicine, then what else on this earth could be? What I am saying has been proven countless times by vast numbers of people worldwide. Just look at the information and testimonials available on the internet. If all this were not true, then why would so many people now be coming forward? Since our trusted news media is controlled by the same individuals and their friends who wish to keep this plant's use restricted, today the only place the truth can be found is on the internet. And that truth is literally screaming that something must be done. The medical system keeps telling us that cannabis needs more study before its medicinal use can be recognized. What they are stating is only a stalling tactic, which the rich and powerful have been employing for years to maintain control. To me, listening to such nonsense is becoming rather tiresome, and I think by now that it should be having about the same effect on all of us. Have we not already listened to enough of this unsubstantiated double talk? And how many people have to die needlessly before all this type of misleading rhetoric comes to an end? Not everyone will fail to remember those who are responsible for this situation. And it is the continuing manipulation of these individuals that is causing so many at present to suffer. I don't care how you look at it. Those who are responsible for these deeds are committing outright murder. And no matter if they are willing to admit it to themselves or not, nevertheless, when they expose us to chemicals and poisons disguised as medicine, then restrict us from the use of natural harmless medicinal substances which can save our lives, this is called genocide. How could depriving vast numbers of those who are suffering from the medications they require to heal properly be looked at in any other way? Yet individuals who blindly support the restriction of this plant's medicinal use go on uttering the same lame-brained excuses without even considering the harm and devastation these bogus statements are causing to people who need this medicine most. If those with substandard intelligence choose to support the use of what the medical system supplies today, it is their right. But do not think for a second that those among us with a brain that still functions will feel compelled to do the same. If you want to allow yourself to be harmed or even killed by those we call doctors today, then by all means, please do so. But as for those of us with reasoning abilities, we will take a much more sensible approach to healing ourselves. I know these are strong statements to be coming from someone such as myself, but they are all based in fact. If they were not, what I have been saying publicly would have been debunked by medical professionals a long time ago. The reason they have avoided trying to do so is simple. They cannot disprove a thing I have stated, and they know it. But I can expose them for what they are to the public in the blink of an eye. To those of you who are not familiar with this subject, you may find my attitude towards politicians and the medical system, etc., to be somewhat extreme. But for the last decade, I have been doing everything in my power to bring this to the attention of physicians and those who are supposed to represent our needs in government circles. But as yet, my efforts have been futile. There is as yet no law against being misinformed or ignorant about a subject. But when the actions of those in political and medical circles show a total disregard for reality and are causing hundreds of millions of needless deaths every year, I think it's time for us all to begin to place our trust elsewhere. It really makes one wonder what is wrong with our society when countless doctors have watched their own patients heal themselves with the use of this natural substance, and yet still they remain quiet. I have also witnessed those involved in politics and the legal profession who were well aware of this medication's effectiveness refuse to lift a finger. Could these really be considered individuals in which we are supposed to put our trust? Watching well-educated and supposedly intelligent people who are in positions of trust turn their backs on such a simple truth for this length of time can be somewhat frustrating. For years now, these individuals have expressed no interest, so I am no longer willing to waste my time trying to convince those in political and medical circles to act. Since everyone in authority I have come into contact with thus far have made it clear that they are behaving in a criminal fashion towards those they are supposed to serve, I could care less about what they think or say. My mission now is to provide the truth to everyone possible, so together we can effect change. And through our website and the information we distribute, now almost everyone can produce their own medication to heal themselves. I openly challenge any doctor to appear with me before a live audience, or better yet, why don't we do this right over national television stations? Let's see whose statements the viewing audience will accept about what is medicine and what is not. In addition, I would like the medical system to show us any medication commonly in use for any condition that would be more harmless or effective to ease a patient's suffering than properly produced hemp oil. Unfortunately, I doubt very strongly that such an event will ever occur. For if it did, the whole medical system would be exposed. And this is not something that the powers that be would like to see take place before the general public. High-grade hemp oil is a substance that all medications deemed fit for human consumption should be measured against. Why do drug companies use placebos in their so-called studies to determine what they intend to sell the public is safe and effective in solving their medical issues? If those in charge of drug companies really wanted to know the truth about the medications they are trying to sell and shove down our throats, Why are the concoctions they produce not measured against hemp oil to determine how safe and effective they really are? The reason they do not is quite clear, since it would prove the substances they manufacture and distribute do present a danger to the public, and in comparison with what nature can provide, are much less medicinally active and safe. Therefore, it begs the question as to why any highly trained medical professional would try to use these chemicals and poisons and expect them to help someone regain their health. Excuse me. Practically everything pharmaceutical companies tell us about the medical virtues of their products is a hoax that has been perpetrated against us by both drug companies and the FDA to instill confidence in that which they wish the public to use as medicines. To those who seem to lack any moral responsibility for what they are doing, this all might be looked at as being good business. But every day, for many of us, their lies and manipulation can cause untold suffering and put vast numbers of those who could have been healed in an early grave. I am not just some guy who is telling you all this so I can mislead you and fill my pockets. If you've seen how badly my bank account has been overdrawn for the past few years, no doubt that would be all the proof you would need. When I started doing this, my aim was simply to help the human race by providing them with medicine and information that can ease their suffering and save their lives. We were able to accomplish this by putting all the information needed to produce this medicine yourself and how to use it properly up on our website, phoenixtears.ca. Then Christian Lorette, a very talented young man from Amherst, Nova Scotia, produced and released our documentary, Run from the Cure, in early 2008. By that time, I had supplied this oil to countless individuals with cancer and many other types of medical problems. The effectiveness of this oil in the treatment of practically all medical difficulties was truly astounding. To combat this, the Canadian government has given me a criminal record, and they have done everything short of shooting me to prevent my message of hope from reaching the masses. In addition, just recently we published my book, Phoenix Tears, The Rick Simpson Story, and at present it is available as an e-book at phoenixtears.ca. Even though my book has been available for the last few months and the facts have been laid bare for all to see, still nothing has been done. If you want to learn the ugly truth about the world in which we live, you will find it between the covers of this book. After reading it, I'm sure you will feel the same disgust that I do for those who have caused all this to take place. That is why I am here in Europe, hoping to find a country which is run a bit more honestly, in which this life-saving medication can be openly produced. Many who attend the events at which I appear are trying to acquire some oil to help themselves or a loved one. But sadly, due to the laws which are in place, I have very few contacts in Europe who can supply the proper material needed to produce this substance. So please do not vent your anger on me, because I cannot supply the medication you require. I am not among those who are trying to deny its use. If you are looking to blame someone, look no further than your trusted governments, for they were the ones who put these so-called laws in place. Back in Canada, I knew many individuals that were growing the right strains required to produce this medication properly on a fairly large scale. Still, due to demand for this substance, in a very short time, I would usually exhaust their supply. But over here in Europe, I cannot speak the different languages, and I don't have the contacts to even supply my own needs on a steady basis. Plus, many growers in Europe do not as yet grow the most potent and sedative indica and indica-dominant strains that I recommend. These absurd laws, which are currently in place, are keeping the price of good medicinal bud very high. And even if patients can find the needed material, often they cannot afford to purchase it. If this plant were allowed to be grown properly, without interference from governments and police, you could buy a kilo of high-grade medicinal bud for practically nothing to solve your medical issues. I am more than willing to prove everything I'm saying. All I need is a government somewhere that will give me the okay. If there is a country anywhere which is willing to turn me loose and let me show them what I can do, in no time they will have more proof than they know what to do with. I have been traveling now for 3 years, and I can tell you from personal experience that living out of a suitcase for an extended period of time is not an experience which one enjoys. I feel now that my time could be better spent staying in one place for a while, so I can get on with my research and begin taking the medication I require on a more steady basis. If there is an honest government out there that really has the best interests of their people at heart, please contact me, and I'm sure we can work something out. The truth in what I'm saying is plastered all over the internet, and there is no shortage of testimonials or scientific evidence to back up everything that this amazing medication can do for the human race. Since the use of cannabis has now been decriminalized in so many countries, surely there is some place which would welcome my expertise in the production of this medication. If we work together, it would not only help your people, but in the end, such a country would be setting an example for the rest of the world to follow. I am not looking for a revolution. My only goal is to see change, and to accomplish this, we must go about it in the proper way. Should we seek retribution? No, we should not. I do not want to hear about anyone carrying out acts of violence against their doctors and elected officials. After all, they are no different than most of us, and they too were fed the same unfounded propaganda about this plant which we were. Unlike many of us, sadly it seems that most of these individuals are unable to come to terms with the simple truth which is now before them, and are only capable of regurgitating the falsehoods they were told in the past. But even though those in positions of authority have been more than a bit slow to act in doing anything positive about this situation, I still feel that no harm should be directed towards them. I also do not wish to see violence carried out against the rich elite, but to put a stop to their activities, I do feel that they must be dealt with in a sensible manner. The fortunes these mega-rich individuals and families have amassed is in reality the proceeds from the crimes they have committed against us all. When criminals are caught, the funds their crimes have generated are confiscated. Since it is a well-known fact how many mega-rich families like the Rothschilds and Rockefellers, etc., came by their fortunes, should we not take what they have stolen from us back and put these resources in the hands of individuals who will do something good for this world? Instead of regulating and taxing cannabis, as some so-called hemp activists have suggested, why do we simply not get together and bring those who have been harming us to justice? I think this could be accomplished if we were to bring these individuals into a real common law court, then confront them with all the evidence of their crimes until they admit their guilt, after which they should be stripped of their money and power so they can do no further damage. Since the rich elite have never been subjected to the hard work that many of us have, I doubt that most of them could even function well in the real world. It may be too generous on my part, But after admitting their guilt, I feel that they should be set free and left with enough so they can live out the rest of their lives in at least some comfort. In truth, these individuals have committed many sinister deeds, and there is no question that their thinking and reasoning is of a psychopathic nature. But still, I cannot help but look at them all as simply being people who are suffering with mental issues, and I'm sure the oil would help many of them think a bit more clearly. What I am suggesting may sound irrational to some, but what other sensible solution is there to the dilemma which we currently face? Should we just stand by and watch the rich elite finish destroying our planet? Or be content to see our governments continue to misrepresent our needs and deny us from the right to use this God-given plant to heal ourselves? I can only hope that we will not allow this to take place. All we have to do is unite, and governments will soon come around to our way of thinking if they wish to remain in office. For in reality, the people are the power, and if we stand as one, it would be very foolhardy for any government to continue ignoring our wishes. We all bear the responsibility for what is to transpire in the future, and in truth, our actions govern what will come to pass. If you want to see your children and coming generations, if you want to see that your children and coming generations are given the opportunity to live in freedom and be afforded the right to heal themselves naturally, please join with me, and together we can give our planet a new lease on life, and not to mention save ourselves in the process. By freeing the cannabis hemp plant, we will in turn free ourselves, and when this occurs, it will be a new day for mankind. So let us act as one, and soon we will find the better world for which we have all been searching. The time to act is now, and if most refuse to do so, then it can only be said that indeed we have become the authors of our own destruction. Surely one would expect that whoever or whatever created our species had something more sensible and meaningful planned for our future than just suffering and death. So I beseech all who hear my words today to help spread this message of hope so we can evolve more rapidly to a much higher level of consciousness. When this comes about, we should be able to live in freedom and plenty, while indeed remaining in good health during our journey through life. And this will finally allow us to fulfill the role for which mankind was created. We were not put here to destroy this earth by being reckless and fighting over its resources. The true function which we are supposed to be performing is to act as shepherds that will manage this planet properly. And very soon now, for our own sake, I hope we will begin to do just that. Can we do better? You bet we can. And now, all we have to do is find the resolve to bring it about. My name is Rick Simpson. Thank you very much.